Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, January the 13th, 2020. It is currently 1:54 p.m. Central Time. I almost said 2019. You think by January the 13th, I would have no problem saying 2020. But welcome, everyone. This is a live broadcast for the Theology Central podcast. It is Monday, January the 13th. And as I said, it's now, around 1:55 p.m. Central Time. Now, we're going to be talking about a very important news article. But before we do so, been doing a couple of things today. I got an email early this morning from Sermon.net. Now, Sermon.net is a website, app. I don't know what you call it. It's a ministry dedicated to allowing churches to be able to broadcast their sermons on the internet via the Sermon.net app, via standalone apps, upload audio, do live streaming, etc., etc., etc. I have looked at their service a long time ago, years ago, and wasn't really happy with the way it was set up. Never felt like I really could understand exactly how to upload things in an easy manner. In other words, when you're going to use a service, one of the things you're looking for is how easy it is to manage your content, how easy it is to upload the content, et cetera, et cetera. So I got the email today, went back to Sermon.net, logged in. Took me forever to remember my old login. Went back to my old login, looked at everything, and was like, okay, this I like this. I think I can make this work. And I did a couple of live streams on Sermon.net, and I checked out the live stream via their app, and it worked. It worked pretty well, I think. It's somewhat frustrating because we've moved everything obviously over to Spreaker, and we have been very happy with Spreaker. We have. But obviously, if you on a sermon site, obviously you're going to find an audience probably looking for sermons. So we will have to see. Basically, it was $3.05 to sign up today for Sermon.net, and then we can do it as low as $5 a month. We could jump up to $20 a month, and really have most of the features. It does seem to have a limited amount of space. So we would have to jump all the way up probably to $100 a month, which we couldn't do that, and Spreaker. So I don't know what we're going to do with it, but if you hear this and you would like to go to Sermon.net or download the Sermon.net app, in fact, let me go to the App Store, see how it's in there. Let me see here, Sermon.net. Let me just go Sermon.net in the App Store and see if that pulls it up. Yes, Sermon.net. If you go to Sermon.net, you can download their app. It's absolutely free. It's available for Android and Apple. Once you have it downloaded, look for Theology Central. That is us. And then you can kind of see how it is set up and how it's designed. And you can give me your feedback. Feedback from listeners is always important. What we really need to determine before we get to the news article this morning is I need to figure out you SoundCloud people, all right? Because SoundCloud numbers continue to be some of the best numbers. And SoundCloud just seems like a weird place for theology and sermons to do so well. So if you listen to us on SoundCloud, can you give me some information? Why are you listening to us on SoundCloud? Are you willing to listen to us somewhere else? Because if we could shut down SoundCloud, then we could really, we could use that money to go to, if we use Sermon.net, in fact, the price for SoundCloud would cover the price for Sermon.net. So, you have to really kind of think about what are you trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. The reason we haven't gotten rid of SoundCloud is because it dominates the numbers. You're talking a couple of hundred downloads every 24 hours through SoundCloud. So it's just bizarre. So, if you listen to a SoundCloud, let us know if you're willing to listen in other ways, and then we can see what we can do. So that's just something that's going on. If you want to check it out, Sermon.net. There's lots of other ministries on there. I cannot speak to the theological accuracy of some of those other ministries. There was a live broadcast coming up, and that's another thing with Sermon.net. You can schedule your live broadcast. So, and actually have a schedule there. So that's another interesting feature. But they had a live broadcast coming up today with a female exorcist. So that was going to be interesting. So what I don't know. So that's what's going on in sermon.net. Check it out. Let me know. You can download the app and you can browse the sermons and see. We may be the only ministry on there with coming to you from our theological perspective, which is obviously we definitely are connected to Reformed theology in certain ways, but definitely a more historical, biblical, theological, exegetical based kind of ministry. So, you can go. I was listening to some sermons on sermon.net this morning, and we could have a long discussion about that. But all right, that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is a news story I have in front of me. And here's the headline. Second expelled student sues Fuller for LGBT discrimination. So we have a second student who was expelled from Fuller Seminary, Fuller Theological Seminary, and they're suing the school for LGBT discrimination. The plaintiff joins lawsuit with requests for more than $1 million. All right, now, I'm going to be honest with you right from the start. When I read a headline like that, I just kind of have to shake my head. You're going to go to a theological seminary, and then you're going to be shocked that you get expelled for, in this particular case, because of his same-sex marriage. So you're going to go to a theological seminary, and then you're going to be shocked that they're opposed to homosexuality, same-sex marriage, LGBTQ. I mean, sometimes it looks like people just go to try to make a point, and maybe they have, maybe they haven't. So there's a part of me that's kind of like, okay, what is going on? However, there's more here, and yes, we could speak about the homosexuals and those in same-sex marriage, maybe trying to make a point by going to a Christian school and trying to get expelled to make a point. Yes, we could look at it from that way. Maybe that's a little too cynical, but we could look at it that way. But I think this has to say about Christian universities, Christian seminaries, and even some churches that we need to consider. So I'm going to look at it from maybe a little different perspective, but let's at least listen to this story, or not listen. Let me read this story to you, and you can listen to me. And, we can see what we think. All right, here we go. Another former Fuller Theological Seminary student who says he was expelled because of his same-sex marriage has joined a lawsuit alleging the nation's largest interdenominational seminary violated anti-discrimination laws. In the amended complaint filed Tuesday morning, so this was obviously last week, Nathan Britson, Brittsan, an American Baptist Churches USA minister, and Joanne Maxson, a former Fuller student who sued the school in November over a similar experience, asked for more than $1 million each in compensation. So they want $1 million each in compensation for being expelled. The suit is believed to be the first of its kind. Stop right there. That's what makes the story interesting. The first of its kind. When something like this happens, it can set a legal precedent that can then be used to go after other schools, other Christian universities, other seminaries, other Bible colleges, and could it at some point be used to go after a church? This is why we need to pay attention to this. This suit is believed to be the first of its kind, and its outcome could have wider implications for Christian colleges and universities, here's the key, who receive government funding. Now, let's stop right there. This is important. If you are a Christian university, if you are a seminary, and you receive government funding, You had to think about this at some point. If the government is funding you, if the government is doing something for you, at some point you're going to be bound by their rules. You're going to be bound by them at some point in time. You're going to be beholden to them. Now, as a Christian university and Christian seminaries, maybe you should rethink taking government money. Now, when it says government funded, what does that mean? Now, that's another question. What do you mean government funded, right? Does this mean a student, let's say a student has their military benefits, the tuition assistance, other military benefits, the different, is it the post 9/11 GI Bill now? I can't remember what it's called now, where, you serve in the military, then that you get money to go to school. Now, is that considered government funded because the money is coming from the government? Is that what they're talking about? Exactly what are they referring to? That is an important question here. But it's always important when the government is involved and you're involved with the government, you're going to be beholden to them at some point. You're going to have to abide by certain rules. And that's something that Christian universities and colleges have to think about. Title 10, I believe it's called, bars federally funded educational programs from discrimination based on sex, though dozens of Christian schools have received exemptions. So dozens of schools have received exemptions. However, that, if you were trying to get an exemption, maybe you should have rethought your possible working relationship with the government. Maybe you have to reconsider that. Let's continue reading here. It's a very important case at this time in our nation's history, said Paul Southwick, the attorney representing Maxson and Britson. This case could set an important legal precedent that if an educational institution receives federal funding, even if it's religiously affiliated, even if it's a seminary, that it's required to comply with Title 10 prohibitions on sex discrimination as applied to LGBT individuals. There you have it. Sets a legal precedent. You get money somehow from the government, some kind of funding. You're in connection with that. Well, you open your door to this kind. You open the door for this kind of thing. The Becket Fund for Religious Liberty will represent Fuller. Becket specializes in the defense of religious liberty and has taken on numerous high-profile cases. And then it names some of the cases that they took on. Becket's lawyers have not yet reviewed the amended complaint and are consulting with Fuller about the next steps in the legal defense. The claims here are dangerous for faith-based institutions, said Becket Fund attorney Daniel Blomberg. If the court was to accept them, then they would be harmful to religious groups of all backgrounds, and particularly minority religious groups that have beliefs that the majority and the surrounding communities might find unpopular. We think that's unlikely that the court would accept these kinds of arguments because they're weak claims, but they're dangerous. Maxson's original suit was filed in November. She was expelled in 2018 after administrators noticed her wife was listed on her tax returns. Maxson, who took mostly online classes, had completed more than 3 years of coursework. It was in her final semester. Britson received his letter of dismissal in 2017, 2 days before beginning his first quarter. And the letter, a dean said administrators knew about Britton's same-sex marriage because of his request to change his last name. Britson had not told the school why he wanted to change his last name in the request, but administrators knew he was part of an LGBT affirming church. Britson had also disclosed his recent marriage to another dean and a professor who spoke with him before the administration sent the letter. The suit alleges Nathan was not informed that his discussion was actually part of an initial inquiry or investigation by Fuller and to Nathan's perceived community standards violation. Britton's attempt to appeal his expulsion twice, according to the lawsuit, and asked for his disciplinary procedure records at least 5 times. The suit alleges the seminary disputed his enrollment at the time of his appeals, as well as whether it was required to release the disciplinary records. Britson wants to appeal his expulsion to the Board of Trustees. He wanted to, but wasn't allowed to do that without documentation of his disciplinary records, according to his lawyer. So it sounds like he wanted to do something, but he couldn't do it unless he had certain documents, but then they wouldn't release the documents. All right, well, if that is true, it sounds like the school kind of playing a game there, and I'm not a fan of that in any way, shape, or form. Now, what kind of drives me crazy, if they had a standard that these people, in fact, here's the paragraph. Let me read this. The case will mainly hinge on Fuller's sexual standards policy, which states the seminary holds marriage to be a covenant union between one man and one woman and believes homosexual forms of explicit sexual conduct to be inconsistent with the teachings of Scripture. These policies are nothing new. Evangelical schools have traditionally asked students to adhere to certain standards in accordance with their faith, with many barring sex outside of marriage. After same-sex marriage was legalized, some schools changed policies to extend benefits to same-sex couples, revise their codes for students, or clarify their commitment to traditional marriage. Fuller maintained its commitment to a one-man, one-woman view of marriage. There is a growing momentum around LGBT anti-discrimination measures in court and mounting legal efforts to expand Title X protections to gender identity and sexuality. According to Southwick, the combined lawsuit is the first against a Christian institution of higher education institution for expelling a married LGBT student since the Supreme Court decided a case in 2015. All right. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this case? Well, number one, we need to pay attention to it. And the reason we need to pay attention to it is it could set legal precedent, which could have major ramifications for Christian institutions. So that's why we should pay attention to it. Number two, this is very important. If you're a school and you want to be a Christian institution, you're going to teach the Bible, stand for biblical morality, and you want to be able to take that stand, you want to have a standard that the students must adhere to, then you have to act like a Christian institution and not play this loose game where I want to be a Christian institution, but I also want to be accepted as a big university by the world, and I want their approval, and I want government funding, and I want to be a part of this program and a part of this program. You can't have your foot in both camps. You're going to have to decide which side you're on. And if you're going to be a Christian university, run it as a Christian university. Christian students who have made a profession of faith, who agree to this standard of behavior, and then you teach the scriptures and teach things from a Christian perspective. Now, that's going to hurt your standing in the wider world. Yes. You're not going to get all kinds of students from different backgrounds. Yes. It's definitely going to hurt. And you may not be able to be a big, well-respected university, but if you want to be like a liberal arts, well-respected university, then you just throw out the Christian standards. You just throw out the Christian standards. And if you want to teach things from a Christian perspective, you can, but you're not forcing or calling for people to have made a profession of faith. You're not calling people to adhere to a certain, Christian standard. But if you're going to be in like a big university in the world, and you want all of those programs and all of that approval, then you may want to just not pretend to be such a big Christian university. I see that here where I live. We've got Christian universities, and it's like, do they want to be Christian universities, or do they just want to be a well-respected university in the world's eyes? And sometimes it seems like they want to be a well-respected university in the world's eyes, and their supposed allegiance to the Christian faith, sometimes you're like, well, wait a minute, what are you doing? And then they'll get themselves in these kinds of situations where, okay, now we're going to take a stand on this behavior. And you're like, well, wait a minute, do you take a stand on that behavior or that behavior? And it becomes very inconsistent, at times very hypocritical, very weird looking, and because they can't decide which side they want to be in. Christian universities need to make a decision. What's your ultimate goal? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to, and this is a seminary. This is a seminary. So, again, the article didn't really explain what government funding they were receiving, but that would be an important part of the story. But Christian universities are going to have to decide what they're going to do. And let me just say, Christian marriage is now legal. Because it's legal, and you're a university receiving money from the government that legalized it, you're going to have to decide what you really want to accomplish. But this case also should challenge churches. There are churches, I say it all the time, who operate like businesses. They operate like businesses. What do I mean by that? Hey, you want to get married? You can use our building. It's only going to cost you $500. Oh, you want me to marry you? Well, as a pastor, I'll marry you. It'll cost you $200 or $300 or whatever the going rate is. And they operate it as a business. You can rent out our building. You can rent my services as a pastor to marry you. That's a marriage business. And then if all of a sudden you come on and go, wait a minute, we're not going to rent out our building to homosexuals. We're going to have an arbitrary rule about who we will and will not. Now you get yourself, because you're operating as a tax exempt ministry, but you're acting like you are a business. And then you want to decide who and who cannot use your business based off your arbitrary rules. This just puts you in the crosshairs for lawsuits and all kinds of situations. Churches need to stop acting like businesses. Don't rent out your building. Don't rent out services. Marry people who are members of your church. Don't rent out your building. Okay, only use it for ministerial things, right? For ministry, and stop acting like you are a business. Because if you act like a business, you're going to be held to the legal standards of businesses when it comes to discrimination. You open yourself up for attack. And I don't understand why churches do this, but it's just crazy. How they charge so much money to use their business to get married, to use their church to get married. Churches are supposed to be there to support the institution of marriage. Churches are supposedly there to promote the institution of marriage. Wouldn't you just be more than happy to say, oh, you're professing believers, you're believers? Okay, what do you believe? Yes. All right, praise God. Two Christians getting married in a biblical marriage. Yes, you want to use our building? We'll be more than happy to allow you to use our building for free. Just ensure that you clean it up and make some kind of an agreement, but don't charge them. Because you're supporting the institution of marriage, or are you using it as a revenue stream? I don't get it, and I could get into all kinds of ways churches operate as businesses. It's just crazy the things they do. Hey, as a church, we're going to have a Bible conference. Oh, you want to come in and hear the Bible taught? It'll cost you $50 at the door. Get your ticket. No, that's not a church. That's a business, okay? I don't understand. Now, they've been able to operate that way and somehow still meet the requirements of being a tax-exempt ministry. I call that greatly into question. I think at some point, there's going to be a move against tax-exempt statuses for churches. It's happened in the past. I think it will happen again. And churches have to be wise when it comes to these situations. Christian university, Christian college, Christian seminary. Are you going to operate as a Christian institution? Or are you going to sit there and try to be well respected in the world, act like you're just a big university? You want that government funding. You want to be a part of all those programs. But then at times you want to play the Christian card. It's contradictory and confusing. And I think you need to determine which side you are on. Now, Fuller Seminary, this case will go. I don't know what's going to happen in the case, but remember, sometimes the first case is it's almost like a test. Okay, let's at least test the court. Let's see how far we can get. And then later on, someone else will come and then take that initial test and then push it a little further until ultimately you can get some things changed. A lot of things get changed through legal precedent in our country. And I think Christian universities, Christian colleges, and seminaries need to pay attention to it. But every church needs to pay attention to how they operate. And I've said that so many times, but I thought I would share this with you. And hopefully it's beneficial there. And hopefully there's something there for you to think about. All right, I'll stop right there. This has been a special live broadcast for the Theology Central podcast. We are live streaming currently on the Spreaker app, and I hope that I hope it's sounding okay, and hopefully it's going well. We're probably going to jump over to Sermon.net here in a minute, maybe do another live stream test there as well, and try to get used to that platform and see how we can utilize that as well. If you would like to check out the Sermon.net app, again, you can go to look for Sermon.net in your app store of choice, Android or Apple. Download the app. Once you find it, do a search for Theology Central, and you should be able to find us. And then, you can let me know what you think about that platform. And it does. I know we have one listener who he wants a better search function when searching for sermons and messages related to a biblical text. And Sermon.net does have that feature. Okay, so they would be happy, but it does have limited space. So yeah, unless we're paying, I don't know how much money a month, money. It's always money. It's always money. That's one of the worst things about ministry. There's so many things you can do, so many ways to reach people, but it always takes money. It always takes. That's why big churches tend to get bigger, because they have the money to invest in marketing and all the things they do. And small churches sometimes they can't get large. There's almost a cap, because unless they get a big influx of money, they don't have the ability to do all the different things out there you can to promote a ministry. So it's kind of a weird dynamic there. So I don't know. We'll see. All right. That's what's happening in our world. Seminaries getting sued, I should say, let's be fair. That was almost hyperbolic. A seminary is being sued for expelling students in regards to homosexual relationships, same-sex marriage. This is a possible sign of things to come for Christian institutions. We need to be paying attention to it, praying about it, but we need to also listen. Christian universities and churches, we need to be as wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. Sometimes I question the wisdom of what Christian universities, seminaries, and churches are doing, because sometimes I think they want the best of both worlds. We're Christian, so we got that support, but we also want the support from the world. So we're going to try to walk on both sides so we can be a bigger university, a bigger seminary. We can have more support and get more money. And you have to decide at some point, do you want to be faithful? Or do you want to be a large, well-respected institution, university, or college? It's hard to have it both ways. All right, I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day. God bless.